Good afternoon, and welcome to this special edition of Career Launch Live. I found somebody so interesting that we just had to have a one-off episode with her. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. Rebekah, please tell us who you are.
Hey, I'm Rebekah Bastian. A lot of things, but I'm the CEO and co-founder of OwnTrail. I'm also a writer, an artist, and mom, and all
the things.
Yeah, exactly.
And so tell us, so we're going to be talking today a little bit about your story and the integrity that you bring to everything, which I absolutely love. Your very interesting journey of becoming a contributor at Forbes, which was just, or not Forbes, but the other magazine. Anyway, we'll get to that, and also your company as well, which is very interesting. So first of all, tell us a little bit, if you could, about your company and what you do there, so that people will know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, OwnTrail is a platform where people share their very authentic and oftentimes nonlinear journeys across their personal and professional lives. So kind of think of it as much more authentic and holistic than what you might see on LinkedIn about what someone's journey has been. And it's a really supportive community and tool set to help people achieve their next milestones in their careers and their lives.
Which I love. Yeah. That's so cool. And I love the nonlinear aspect of that. It's so cool. And actually, on that note, so we had a very interesting introduction. So you had written an article about neurodiversity a few years ago, and it was actually a very good article, but there was just one, and to no fault of your own, I want to put this out there for anybody watching, one very problematic area. And so I had done a post about it. I didn't tag you. Somebody did. I think but somebody tagged you. And the most amazing thing about you to me was that you immediately just went, okay, so let's do another article and talk and fix it. Like, just immediately went to, okay, cool, no problem, let's just do this. So tell us a little bit about both articles, and then why that was your reaction to that situation.
Yeah, well, so the first article, like you said, I read that a few years ago. I was still a vice president at Zillow at the time, and I write for Forbes, and my swim lane is equity and belonging in the workplace. And so I kind of explore a lot of different topics along those lines. And my approach tends to be like, I'm always learning. We're all always learning. And so
aren't we? Yes.
Yeah. So I if there's a topic I'm curious about, or a conversation I have that brings up some new ideas, I'll oftentimes write an article about it and do research and pulling, quotes from people that know more about that than me. But I kind of learn and share at the same time through that format,
right?
Which is awesome to be able to do that, but you also have to have a level of humility if you're going to kind of learn in public like that. The first article that I wrote was actually, I was talking with a few different employees that I worked with at the time, who were, I think one was autistic, one was ADHD, and then someone else that was also on the autism spectrum that I reached out to there, right. And kind of, was having some really interesting discussions with them about what their needs were at work. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a really interesting thing to explore more deeply. None of them wanted to be quoted in the article, which is fair, and so
fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I reached out to a couple people that I knew that were professionals that worked with people with, with different neurodiversities, and quoted them, and, pulled in some different research into this article, which was basically how to support people with neurodiversities in the workplace.
Yes. And I do want to specify that most of the article was great. It really was. I actually quoted part of that article in another talk I did recently. But there was just the one area, and it was talking, I think it was dealing with masking and things like that. And I loved it because my post, was about like, oh gosh, please don't tell people that this is okay. And your response was, great, let's tell people it's not okay. But you also did something interesting. You didn't do the second article in your words.
Yeah. Well, because that was like you said, there's the issue with, one professional that had recommended masking, which for those listening who aren't familiar, since I've learned more about that myself recently, is having people kind of go through actions that make them behave in a different way than what's natural to them in order to kind of fit in, right? And so in this case, saying people should make eye contact, and it sounds like, from what I've learned from our discussions and other ones, that can actually cause a lot more trauma and harm. So but I think the other higher level thing was that it was an article about neurodiversity without quoting people that were experiencing those neurodiversities or that those are their identities. And so that's a huge gap as well, right? And so this one is really okay, how can I use this platform that I have to center the voices that really do need to be heard in this discussion?
Which was a beautiful mentality. And so I flooded you with humans that were willing to do this. You were so gracious about it. I think I sent you way too many introductions, honestly. I kind of overshot a little bit, but I knew, to your point, I knew that a lot of people don't want to talk publicly about it. And for very good reason. I also want to put emphasis on that there are very good reasons for that. There are people that lose jobs because people find out. There are people that can't get jobs because people find out. So I understand. I understand completely and totally. Some people don't feel safe talking about it publicly. So that's okay. So, but I did find her a swarm of humans that were very happy to talk about it. And the resulting article was really freaking great. It was, because it was everybody's voice kind of coming together with this message. And it was these different ways of thinking and different approaches, which I thought was super cool. So the point of all of this is, that was a really cool way to meet, and kind of an unusual way to meet somebody of, hey, you did this wrong. Okay, let's have a conversation. But I wanted to point out the integrity there, because it's something I talk a lot about on the shows, and it's something that I value very much, and that showed a lot of integrity to put other humans first, and actually your own accuracy ahead of your own ego. So first of all, why was that your response? And second of all, what would you say to other people that may have a similar intro to another person as to how to respond?
Well, I think, writing about the topics that I do, I'm writing about, oftentimes a lot of identities that I don't hold myself. And so being in the role of more of an ally than a centered person in a lot of different spaces, you can't really bring a lot of ego. That can usually be pretty counterproductive to the goals there.
It is.
So, I try to take that stance in general. And we were chatting a little bit before this, I think your options, and you're never going to get it all right, but the options are basically don't say anything until you do think you have it completely perfect and right, and learn everything before you speak up. Which you're still going to screw up a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, it's still
impossible to foresee every possible twist and turn of what you're sharing. Or the approach I take is, share as I learn. And if you're going to do that, you definitely have to be prepared to, correct yourself and kind of, it's learning in public, and learning in public isn't just about being right in public. It's also about being wrong in public. Right.
That's right. Oh gosh. Yeah, it happens. So no, I like that. And it was a really cool, inclusive, and also just smart approach, honestly. I mean, and especially when you're in business, right? You have to protect your brand, and you have to protect your integrity and your dignity. And so as one business owner to another, I saw a lot of business intelligence there too, of, okay, well, I can either completely screw the pooch here, or I can fix the problem, which sometimes means admitting that you're wrong, and that's okay.
And it's really one of my pet peeves as business leaders of they're so scared to speak up on anything. Oftentimes, in bigger corporate environments, I'm sure there's probably some pragmatic reasons for that. But when I started my own company, it was incredibly refreshing to be able to say, you know what, I'm just going to speak on everything that I believe in here. Yep. There is no neutrality when there's these issues that impact human lives, and so I think that's really important. And you don't look.
That's true.
I personally look more unfavorably on people that don't speak up at all than people that speak up, get it wrong sometimes, and kind of evolve through that. I think it's especially in a time where it's important that people use their voices.
I think, yeah, you do. You need to speak up. And like you said, sometimes you might mess up and then you go, okay, well, gosh darn it. All right, let's let's fix it. Let's move on to the next thing. And I think it was really interesting because especially with the work that you do with the nonlinear thinking, it's kind of linked, right? So it kind of tied in. So I liked that and then kind of the grace that was given. So I want to talk about that. So you went from corporate, I mean, big time corporate type roles into owning your own business. So why did you do that?
Yeah, well, so it started with a book that I wrote, which called Blaze Your Own Trail. And it's also very nonlinear. It's a kind of choose your own adventure style book where we're
fun.
Exploring the different decisions and pathways that women take through our personal and professional lives. And really, solidarity and confidence in the fact that we all have these really kind of twisty, turny journeys and it never goes perfectly, but we make it through, and so
somehow.
Yeah, totally. And so, I wasn't actually looking to leave my job or start a company, but after I'd signed with my publisher and was kind of playing around with what I thought would be a really cool book launch website where people are sharing their trails, I ended up just kind of having some big ideas around really the importance of being able to both own your story in a really authentic and holistic way, but also see that of other people, like be able to say, like, what are all the different ways that someone got to this place that I aspire to, or made it through this thing that I'm navigating right now, and be able to see people that look like me in those places. And so, just kind of took on a life of its own and ended up, my co-founder, we both left executive jobs that we really loved actually, but 100% worth it.
Love it.
And, it's definitely, as I'm building out this technology platform to help people really achieve their next milestones and reflect deeply on what they're navigating in their lives, it's a very meta effect where I'm discovering all that for myself too. And it's been pretty
right. It is a cool, and when you're inspired to action and you start a company that's so different than I just want to own a business and, this and that and make money. I mean, it's in a completely, and not that there's anything wrong with that, I want to be very clear, but it is a completely different approach and a completely different experience to do it because you just want to unleash this new way of doing things onto the world. And I love the innovation there because it was just this idea of, okay, let's just all come together and share our stories, but not in a weird, like social media awkward way or like, which please no more social media platforms. And it wasn't in a, we're a business and we have to be so serious kind of a way. It was just, it's in its own little unique world, which I absolutely love. And I think that a lot of people out there are scared to take those kind of cool ideas and run with them. So what would you say to those people that are just sitting there and they have this great idea, but they're like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that, or I'm scared to take that step? What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, I will say that I've had a lot of other wild ideas that I haven't run with. This ended up being one that I just got to the point where I'm like, I can't not do this. And I think that's a helpful stage to be at. Like, it helps you make a decision there, like I've been able to talk myself out of other things before. But then, I think, and I've done this a lot of times with like starting new things within the corporate space and stuff. And then certainly with this leap was kind of doing it on the side for a while to make sure that like, it's really what you want to be doing. It's going to kind of, you have enough data to say that it's going to work, based on like,
yep.
Target audience or people you could be working with or people that could be funding you, just kind of prove some of those things out. I've done that with a lot of different pivots in my career, and I think it's a nice way of like, you don't just have an idea and then show up the next day and be like, I quit.
I mean, maybe you do, but probably don't do that. Probably don't.
So I was working on OwnTrail for about 6 months before I gave my notice, and then from when I gave my notice till I was like really gone was like a 4-month ramp down period.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which was, lovely that had a really strong relationship with the company and had been there for so long that worked out. But yeah, I think it was nice to kind of prove things out and take some of those baby steps, but then at the same time, not do that indefinitely. And that was really like when I decided to give my notice, it was really this realization that like, okay, I could do this on the side indefinitely, but it would have a lot less likelihood of succeeding than if I went all in now.
Right.
It was like there's kind of a balance there between being reactionary and too stagnant, and it's fine.
That's true. And at some point you just kind of have to go, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
Jump into the deep end.
You know, I think like there's kind of, I guess, essentially the financial side of risk that you take, and you can kind of calculate like, well, how long could I live on no salary or founder salary, or how much could I invest into this or whatever. And you can do those calculations. And then there's like the non-livelihood related risk of like, what if I fail and I look really stupid? Or what if, you know,
wait. I want to pause on that real quick, because that is such a real fear. Like, I am going to look so dumb to everybody I know if I don't succeed, or I might lose my partner, I might lose my friends or whatever it is. I would, first of all, this is my sister that posted this comment to anybody who's looking at this. And that's advice I gave her. And there is that fear, right? There is that kind, and so you have to just learn to let that go. And it's, I don't think I was born with the same amount of fear as everybody else. I don't know why. My mother even tells me stories about when I was very small, and I just didn't have that same type of fear about stuff like that. But the other part of that is the security in yourself that it's okay if you fail, because that doesn't mean that you're bad. Everybody out there who's succeeded has also failed. Everybody. Any human out there, all the business owners.
Even ratio, right? Like I definitely, like, you know, probably 1 failure to success.
Oh yeah. Like even my business, like there were fails along the way. Like, trust me, epic fails along the way.
But I think like, okay, so categorically there's like the kind of risks that will probably kill you, like jumping off a cliff or something, or could, you know,
don't do that.
Could kill you, right? Starting a business is not in that category, generally speaking. I mean, I guess it depends on your business, but most aren't. Then there's the type of risks that could really significantly change your lifestyle. And I think those are the ones you really have to calculate, like how, you know, the financial kind of like do the math. How is this going to work out? How do you know, what level of line risk are you going to go to there and stay to that? And then there's the kind of risks that are more psychological, or just like, the internal, the psychological, the like, it feels scary, the ego pieces, all of those. And I think in order to go into business, you got to kind of push past that third bucket of risk, and just, you know, it doesn't mean it's not scary, but it means that you're just pushing through it anyway, because, and it becomes less scary. The more times you fail and realize that like, no one really is judging you. Everyone's just thinking about themselves anyway.
Right. Nobody cares about you. They just are off in their own little world. No, they do, but
as much thought into like how you appear in a certain situation than you do, right? And so,
right. And it's just true. And I want to say too, so when you get to that emotional piece, you can use a therapist to help you push through that. You can use friends. But the other big thing that I like to tell business owners is make sure that your humans that are in your household are on board with you. So make sure if you have a partner, whatever that relationship looks like, that they're on board with this decision and this adventure, and that they actually understand what it's going to mean. So that means that you might want to talk to other entrepreneurs that have been there and done that. You might want to listen to some talks on YouTube, read a few books, but you need to understand what it actually looks like. So my sister, who just posted this comment about the advice I gave her, was, you know, she was starting her own business. I'm super proud of her. I think she's going to be amazing. She does pet therapy for businesses and schools and things like that. And I was telling her, you know, things are going to go wrong. It's going to happen 100%. And you need to know this, and you need to just keep going anyway. And it's okay. It's no big deal. And finding that other human that's been there and that's maybe further along, I think is also really important. That's like there, so that they can tell you that, like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. It's okay. You know, like the world has not ended. You are fine.
Well, and I think through it at the same time as you, right? Like the solidarity is huge.
Yes. Yeah. That support is real. Like it's just so important. I have a very good friend, and we're both in, different stages of our business, but in growth stages. And she actually has one business with her husband that's more even further advanced than my company. Then she has one that's more new. And we just kind of support each other through this whole little process. And it's this great experience. And so, yes, very much so. Have the peers too that are in kind of the same boat that will support you and be there, give you tips like, oh, I found this, share those resources, network. Oh my God, I'm an introvert, so trust me, I know what I'm saying. But network. It's a thing. It matters.
Well, and I'm an extrovert who hates networking. So but I mean, I hate walking into a room of strangers and okay, it's time to network, But I just focus my energy on meeting people one-on-one, because then you can have
right.
And don't have to be working the room or whatever.
Right. Yes. It can be different for everybody. I'm actually the opposite. I love, I don't mind one-on-ones. One-on-ones are okay. But my favorite thing are actually conventions.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that hilarious? I'm sick, but what it is I can actually zone in and just get that one-on-one with them. I don't have to stand up and do this whole hokey commercial and all of that kind of nonsense. I could just go in and have that conversation with the person I actually want to talk to. And I love that. Absolutely love that.
Good job.
It's a whole thing. And at that night, actually, I tell people I win at conventions. I'm super good at them. Just crazy good at conventions. So I have some tips if anybody ever wants to do conventions and be really good at them. Here's my few rundown things. So if you're building your business, okay, number one, you need to have something that's so interesting that everyone seeks you out. So for me, I have the freaking coolest business card you've ever seen in your whole life. I should have had it with me for the show so I could show it off. It is a glittery bottle opener with my octopus mascot on one side and then my information on the other. And it's very beachy and it's metallic and it's super adorable. And people come find me because of that. They come seek me out because of that. And sometimes I'll actually walk around with Jeremy, whose tentacles you can see in the background here. This is Jeremy over here hanging out. I'll take him with me. So have something like that that's an eye catcher. And then just, and when you walk up to a group of people, I always tell people, find the dominant one. That's who you want to talk to. Okay. So whoever the one is that all the others are just kind of buzzing around, walk up to that human and have that conversation. And again, the one-on-one. So I don't want to focus on that, but it is a thing, right?
I'll add comfortable shoes to that list as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Wear comfortable shoes. Don't kill yourself in high heels or some kind of nonsense. Or if you have comfortable heels, that's fine, but be comfortable and comfortable clothes, for the love of God. Don't make yourself crazy. Highly recommend Calvin Klein for conventions. So, so I want to talk about kind of the last little piece that I really want to talk about is, so, we've talked about, the integrity aspect and how you got to where you are on your business side, but then you also became a writer for some pretty incredible publications, and you have some interesting stories about that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into writing and into contributing and kind of what that looked like for you, and again, why you did it, what motivated you?
Yeah, well, I think the most important kind of piece of the story is that I didn't even discover I liked writing until I was 36. So I like to mention that because I think there's this misconception that anything that you're really good at in life, or that ends up being a big part of your life, it's something you've been doing since you were a kid or whatever. And
right.
So, and I have a lot of examples of things like that I didn't start until later in life too. But yeah, I got asked to write a guest blog post by kind of a small local women in tech blog. And I did, and I think it turned out pretty good. Is something about imperfect success, right? Here. And
very fitting.
I shared it out and people seemed to really like it. So I looked up Arianna Huffington's email address on Google and cold emailed her and sent her my blog post. And
I just love the cojones that you had. Just go straight for the top. Just all these other humans.
And talk about the ratio of no's to yeses here. I'm always shooting my shot, and maybe like 1 out of 20 times it works, but like those are really cool 1 out of 20 times, you know?
Right.
So she responded and she's like, this is great. And she gave me a byline on Huffington Post. And so then I just started writing. I was like, I had the ability to, you know, to share it out. And so turns out I had all these different thoughts inside me that were waiting to come out, and I didn't even know it. And I'm like, oh, that's an article I want to write. That's one I want to write. And I just started writing a ton, and it was really fun.
That's so cool. I love the shot. I love the shot aspect because, you know, you're going to get the no's, right? And it's the same thing for job seekers, for business owners, you know, artists, all of that kind of thing. You're going to get all these no's. I get told no. But you get, you know, everybody gets told no, but you keep going until you get the yes that you want, and the right yes. And sometimes it's not the yes you thought it would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's the right one.
This was like, that story is ridiculous because it just worked right away. You know, I didn't send it to anyone else. It was just Ariana.
Just super impressive.
They're not all like that, obviously. You know, I mean, like so then I wrote a book and I got that published, which was a whole lot of rejection and being ignored by literary agents and stuff before I found my publisher. I've raised venture funding for my startup, which, like, you know, women get 9% of venture funding dollars right now. So like,
it's hard.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So the fact I've done, that's a lot of rejection. So I've really built up my rejection muscles over time. And eventually, like you said, right? Yes. And I would definitely say things like, you know, who's invested in my company or the publisher I ended up working with were like very much the right yes in terms of being really values aligned. And so then you start to see the no's as kind of a gift too. They're like, oh, I'm figuring out the people that don't share my values or my vision here so that I can find the ones that do. And I think
that's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. It is. You know, you can get shot down by something and at first you're like, just, oh, this is so devastating. And then it turns out that it was the best thing that happened to you, just end up in the right place. And one of my favorite stories about that is, you know, I'm a huge fan of like the Rocky movies and all of that from back in the day, right? And Sylvester Stallone, a lot of people don't realize that Sylvester Stallone wrote those movies. It was before he was famous. He was a nobody. And he lost everything. He became homeless, and he just was insisting that someone make this movie, and not only make it, he actually turned down a movie deal because they wouldn't let him star in it. He said, no, I have to be the star. It has to be me. And so eventually, of course, we all know it got made. It was mega successful. He became one of the biggest action stars in the world, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, period. And all because he just stuck to his guns and said, I know this is the right thing. I know this is going to be big. I know this is going to be a success. And so I always loved that. Like, you know, he was so tough and just got through all those no's and got the right yes. He had a yes before that, but it wasn't the right one. Yeah. And so I always like to tell people, make sure, you know, I've had people try to, you know, invest in my technology or buy out my technology that don't give a rat's patootie about inclusion. I'm like, well, you're the wrong person for this. You know, you can't have it. And yes, I do want to sell the darn thing, but not to somebody that doesn't want to take care of it and somebody that doesn't get the vision. That's the whole point of the thing. So I always tell people, make sure you get the right yes, but also, you know, sometimes you have to realize that what you're doing isn't working. Sometimes it's how you're doing it, you know? So even if you're very sure that, you know, this general thing needs to be done, you might need to change how you're doing it. So do you have any shining examples along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, I'll even tie in like to the conversation we're having right now about the right yes, which is, you know, when I went out to start to raise funding, right? And well, at first I didn't realize how hard it would be.
It's hard, right? It's way harder than people think.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, at first I was very kind of like very influenced by what investors would say to me. So I'd have a long conversation and be like, oh, we need to change this. And then I'd have another conversation and be like, oh, wait, we need to switch back over here. And I was kind of like blowing in the wind with all the different feedback. And it was and I was moving further and further from like the core vision that I had started with. And so then all of a sudden I was like, it was kind of the how was like, stand in my own power here, you know, obviously, which isn't to say you shouldn't take feedback. Like,
right. Yeah, you should.
But like, what are the pieces of feedback to take and how do those integrate with it? And so kind of staying true to the North Star and the values that we set out with. And then like, I'm just going to treat this as like, oh, cool, you don't get it? Okay, great. That's really good to know, because then I can spend my time talking to other people that might. And that really changed the game, both in terms of like a lot less kind of dizzying kind of also like ultimately we have found really investors because of really changing that approach from just taking back some of the power and standing in that and finding the people that are that right. Yes. And so
right.
Yeah.
That's so important. No, it really is. And also remembering not to bite off more than you can chew at one time. So I've worked with a lot of startups over the years on the consulting side and back when I was, being an executive assistant and stuff like that. And one of the biggest mistakes I saw people make is they bit off more than they could chew. So I always tell people, start here and then grow it. So you don't have to do your whole vision right away. Just start with a piece of it. And then scale it from there is often the most effective way to go about it. So as we wrap up, and thank you again so much for coming on. It's been a great talk. So I want to kind of circle back to the integrity aspect and the aspect of not always needing to be right in the moment every time, but insisting on correcting it when you're not. So what are your final thoughts on that, and what you would say to other people that as a leader or a business owner, where somebody might look at them and say, what you're doing is not inclusive, or what you're doing is not the most ethical way to do something? What's your advice to those people?
Well, I mean, I really think feedback is a gift. Like when someone's actually taking the time to tell you something that could be hard to tell you, like that's not fun for them. It's not fun to go tell somebody that something you don't think hear, right? So the fact that someone's going out of their comfort zone to give you feedback in terms of like how something you said or did impacted them, or how they observed it impacting others, like, God, thank you for like, it's really awesome when people take the time for that. And I think like, it's not a time to be defensive, right? There's no expectation that you get everything right. And like, even if you convinced someone of like the reason that you should be defensive about this, it's not going to land in the same way as if you were, just receiving and learning from that feedback. And I think it feels better for everybody to do the latter. And like, let's all acknowledge that we're humans and we're going to make mistakes, and like giving someone that gift of feedback and then receiving it in a way that shows appreciation, I think just lifts everyone up in a better way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only thing I will add to that is, just remember that when somebody comes to you, for every person that comes to you, there's 10 more that feel the exact same way. Yeah. So they're not just representing themselves. There is a whole group of people behind them. So with that, thank you so very much for joining us today to talk about your incredible story and your cool product. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, well, best place to find me is on OwnTrail.com. Definitely connect with me on there. And anyone listening, if you want to, OwnTrail is free for anyone to create a trail. But if you want to join the membership and get all of the utility out of it, you can use the code community to get 25% off your first year. So would love to see your listeners on there, and definitely connect with me so I can follow along and help out where I can. And then I'm just, I'm Rebekah Bastian, and I'm on all of the usual kind of
social media.
There, you can find OwnTrail, and definitely love to connect with the whole community here.
Wonderful. And I do highly recommend connecting with her. She's a very cool human. Check out the article that she put out about neurodiversity, the new one, with all the different quotes. What's the title of it again? I forget.
What neurodiverse employees want their
employers to know. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's it. And it was incredible. If you put in neurodiversity in Forbes, it's like the first one that pops up right now. It's the newer one. It's really, really cool. But thank you again.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Oh, technical difficulties. People always do that to me. All right. So thank you again so very much for coming on. Thank you, everyone. And they'll have the regular Career Launch Live Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Bye.
Thank you.